Well, I might as well get going because this is a fun topic. I think everybody here should be excited about it. It is Apple Configurator, and my name is Randy Saeks. Hi. Seats over there. I wanted to do the game like if you have an open seat next to you, please raise your hand and turn to the person you don't know next to you and tell a story. So anyway, Apple Configurator. It's relatively new. It's a cool app. If you look at what was out there before, it's a lot better than using iTunes. I was kind of looking at the logo a little bit when I was starting. I thought it looked like that, just a little bit. Kind of staring back. And the good thing is it does let you do a lot of things. It doesn't say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And then everybody in your department dies. So, as I said, my name's Randy Saeks. I do IT administration for a school district outside of Chicago. So, Chicago, woo? Yeah. All right, good. Excellent. So, a little bit of an outline, stuff I want to go over, talk about some of the challenges, some of the things we see with Configurator that probably I see that I bet everybody else here sees when you're looking at iPads and iOS devices. Talk a little bit on the ownership models again. If you haven't heard enough about ownership models, you'll hear a little bit more. Some of the abilities. Did anybody do the Apple ID session or the deploying iOS and education session? All right, so there's some foundational stuff that'll hopefully from that carry over, and we'll talk about that a little bit, and then wrap up with Q&A, and then everybody can go like have dinner and drink and forget about what you just learned. Current challenges. So these are the things that we're seeing. And can everybody hear me okay? I need to talk louder, slower, faster. Neither? Okay. So what we're really seeing is just there's a lot more of iOS devices coming into organizations. And it can be via bring your own device scenario where people are coming in with iPads or phones or iPod touches or anything along those lines. And we're also seeing it from the price point from I can get a MacBook Air or I can get how many iPads for that same price. So when you start looking at accessibility and availability of technology for everybody, this is priced fairly well. It does a good amount of what we need it to do. And with these devices, we can hit a lot of individuals getting access to the technology. I have required apps in quotes because what's required always changes. We find out, hey, we need these 5 apps for everybody. And then the teacher over there will say, well, but now we need this. And now we need sock puppets, and this is required for me because it's important, and we don't want to be the judge of that. We don't want to say this is what's important, this isn't, because quite frankly, I'm not in the classroom. I know what's going on, but I don't have the qualifications to say this is going to enhance our learning experience the most. So we try to stay out of that. But we get these giant lists of here's all the apps I need. Varying levels of device management, and there were some sessions I heard yesterday just from feedback of we're required to have ownership of the app. So that's going to be a little bit of a deployment scenario than another scenario where you don't have to have ownership. And you could say, if you want it, we'll charge for it, and it's going to be $3. So that's another issue that we have. And then the other one, and I think John talked about this a little bit in his session, the device usage intention versus how we're looking at it. And it took me a little bit of time to go away from the approach of it's 1980s, I need to manage this, I need to have full control over it. Because the iPad is a personal device. It's not working the best way if you have to fully manage it. And I think that's a lot of the headaches that I'm sure, have you all seen that? Where if you take the computer approach of they need these apps, the dock has to look like this, these are the folder arrangements that need to be here, you have to have these 17 shared calendars, and it gets to be a headache. Because you're looking at it from so many different avenues and so many different pieces, it gets challenging. I had a colleague in the Chicagoland area that was saying, well, if it's a one-to-one device and it's deployed to a person and the apps are on there, they don't need the internet. They have all the apps. And if they needed the internet, 90% of the stuff wouldn't work because it's Flash or Java. And I just couldn't understand that. You need to stop managing the device and you need to give the access, make it work, and tell people, hey, now go do what you need to do. And that's kind of that mindset that takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's worthwhile once you get it. Helps out a lot. IT tasks, what are the things that we're typically doing? And is everybody here IT, or do we have any educational tech people? All right, so there's at least one. That's good. But what we're looking at is, I mean, for me, it's all right, something comes in, I have to get it set up, to put iOS updates, I have to put apps on there, other configuration settings, wireless. Content and apps, here's what we need on it. Again, depending upon your ownership model, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, you may or may not spend any time on that step. Inventory and accounting, and that's mostly for here's the serial number, here's the owner. If it gets lost, we know who had which device and where we can find it, and the correct serial number to give Apple Care when something bad happens. You want to have that. And then, again, upkeep. And these are kind of all those tasks that if you look at a traditional computer lab, you would have. All right, I need to deploy the machines, make sure all the apps are on there, make sure they're in inventory, and okay, software updates. So where does Configurator help out? So it does well with device preparation, getting it ready. It's kind of the administrative stuff, inventory, updates. That first step, kind of right after you get it out of the box, you take that nice breath of the fresh Apple product smell, take it in, and preparation. Configuration, things like what's needed on it. What apps do we need? What settings? What profiles? What restrictions? Mobile device management. The list goes on and on. Deployment, and that's the fun one. That's actually doing it. That's giving it to people, the whole process of getting everything set up and letting it go and seeing how it works. It's like taking the idea, just letting it spin, and all right, we thought it would work well, we got to this point, and now we're there. And then again, upkeep, that last device of end user has it, what do you do? And out of that, that's really what Configurator does. It rolls those kind of three things in. Wasn't that a cool transition? You know how long I spent on that?
Go back and see it again.
Okay. Yeah, so when you have an 80-minute flight and thank you, that's all I have. No, so Configurator tasks, what are some of the things? If you've looked at the app, it's broken down into 3 categories: prepare, supervise, and assign. Get ready for mass deployment. Supervision is enforcing the configuration. And then assigning is when you do the assigning to end users. And each requires the previous step. So you can't assign an unsupervised device. And you can't assign an unsupervised device that isn't prepared. So you can't go from prepare down to assign. There's things in. Again, there's info on that I'll talk about. Some of the considerations, things that we need to think about. Is anybody here not from the US where if I talk about VPP, you're going to get angry? Yeah, so that's one thing that is in the US. And for educational institutions, it's nice because, again, you get tax-free. And then your quantities of 20 licenses or more are half price. So if you need to buy 11, buy 20. It's going to be cheaper. You have to think about if the device is going to be supervised and unsupervised, and the different actions of abilities, what you can do with those when they're supervised or when they're assigned. Device configuration backups. And before we had Configurator, how many of you were using iTunes to image your iPads one by one? What was the biggest deployment you had? Did you have like 200 that you had to plug into iTunes and spend an entire week at work?
40.
Okay, so if it was 40, it was just 2 days. Again, this helps with it a lot. And I mean, if you look at the needs of what we need, this does an excellent job of that. I don't want to just make jokes. It is a great tool. And again, profiles and restrictions. If you want to do those, you can. You don't have to. And there's benefits for that. The whole concept of MDM and the mobile device management, there's a bunch of free products out there for K-12 that exist. iOS Enterprise, I believe, is an online site that has great reviews. Meraki, through their systems manager, I believe, just said, hey, if you're education, you can use it for free. Basic in what it does, but a great story I have about that was, I don't know if I want to use MDM that much, but I want to have the capability. And when I had a little drippy, runny, huggy kid come in saying that I can't use my iPad, oh, well, what's wrong with it? What doesn't work? Do you have a peanut allergy? Did somebody with a peanut touch it and now you can't? No, it wasn't that. Someone set the lock screen code. Oh, oh, well, 2 days ago I enrolled this. I'm just going to go clear the code out. So it was very flexible after the deployment was in place because we had the capability to make changes over the air. And that's a very good reason of why you would look at an MDM product. Management methods. I don't know the exact number, but I'm kind of estimating that when you hit about 10 to 20, you can do, all right, just give me the stack, I'll configure them. You get a little bit higher, maybe up to 50, you would look at the iPhone configuration utility with pushing out restrictions, profiles. Those can be emailed. They can be put on a website. You can just tap on it to install, or you can do it via USB, so that's nice. And as you start getting higher and higher numbers, you want to do something like Profile Manager that's included with Lion, or you want to look at an MDM product out there that will take care of those settings for you and make it easier with doing stuff. Any questions on that stuff so far? That's stuff and things. They're all going to wait for the end when this content gets really good, right? Ownership models. And this one's, stop using the computer mindset. Don't manage an iPad as if it's a computer. It's the wrong way. You're going to have a philosophical difference between how the device is intended to be used and how you're viewing it and letting people use the device. And kind of that line in the sand that you want to draw is going to really hinge on who's going to have app and content ownership on the device. Because I don't care if we give the app to a student when they're done. I mean, if you think of the cost of apps, and you say, all right, for education, it's half price, no tax. All right, 20 bucks? What's a good number to use for app prices for like a year? 20, 25 bucks? Okay, even 65. We'll use that number because you participated. I wish I had a gold star and we could trade it in for stuff at the end of the day. But okay, $65, take over the lifetime of that device. What's going to be the cost of people hours to upkeep it? If it's the institutional ID that you constantly need to punch in the passcode for. Configurator helps us with that, but again, one of those things is to keep in the back of your mind of considerations behind it that aren't just, all right, the $2 application. Quite honestly, if it only cost us $65 for every device that we had with our users using, and I could say, you own all the apps on here and everything's your responsibility, I would pay that in a heartbeat. And be able to say, it's you, they're yours, update it as you want. So the ownership models. There's really three, and only three. There's personal, institutional, and layered. And this is all from the iOS 5 deployment guide, so if you haven't seen that, go grab it. It's a great resource. It has some excellent use examples in there. But I threw a little chart to kind of go with user control, IT control, because very rarely are they somehow in like that corner. I don't know how you can get something in that corner with high IT control and complete user control, because it just doesn't happen. So institutional, you're looking at really the IT organization, whoever's supporting it, having the ownership and the capabilities to ensure that that device is working. One to many. So we're going to pretend this is an iPad. So here's one iPad, and all of you are going to use it. So we have to have the consistent state. No, you could have it. You can fight over Angry Birds now. That's going to be the challenge. But yeah, that model is one where you have a lot of people using one device, and it needs to be controlled. That's different than the complete opposite end of personal, where the only thing I might do is take the serial number and then just give it to the user after I've assigned it. And then there's this middle ground piece of the layered, and that allows you to kind of blend both. I'm going to talk about what those all do. Personal. If you do that, your end user is going to have the ownership of the apps. And that's going to mean whenever they leave, they graduate, if the employee is terminated, if the school, your organization has some catastrophic disaster and they're not around, they're still going to have the ownership of the app. And it mimics the consumer model. So it's the same thing of you get the device from the store, you take it home, unplug it, put it in. There's there's very little tech involvement in this because, again, we unbox it, we steal your little Apple stickers so you don't have them, and then we pass it on and say, all right, now it's yours. Now that you don't have the stickers. So if you're the tech person and you really annoy someone, you're going to find Apple stickers in the weirdest places in your office. especially when you're gone for a conference like this. I don't want to know where those are going to be. If you do this model, you're looking at the apps as a consumable. So you're saying, hey, it's like paper, it's like pencils, ink, pens, dry erase markers, stuff like that. Users would sync with iTunes or iCloud. So again, it's that very personal consumer model. You can provide restrictions or configuration. That might be something as simple as I'm going to connect in and give you our wireless settings so you don't have to punch it in the first time. It could also be enrolled in an MDM. If you wanted, again, if you enroll it in an MDM, it's not really the personal model, but this is just app ownership. As you see, you can take about 17 different things and lump them all together and somehow get like 17 factorial number of combinations. Institutional, the institution owns the app. It's going to be associated with an organizational Apple ID. That's something like ourschoolrocks@me.com. Centralized syncing, so that's going to mean if you're looking at kind of this deployment approach, there's a configurator machine that's going to get plugged into the computers, the cart of iPads every so often. You can do things like creating backups and restoring those, and that's definitely nice to have the capability to do. That'll pull things like configuration changes. So if you have apps in folders, and you do the device backup, and then you restore it, and you put the apps on, the apps will appear in that folder structure. You can do grade or department or building Apple IDs with that manner. Again, you would need this if people are under 13. Now, of course, if you question in the back. Yeah.
You said the backups would restore things like the groups of apps.
Yes.
When I did my backups and restored them, I had one particular app that I dragged to the dock.
Okay.
If you want to call it dock. And when I restored it, that was not there, and those apps weren't there. Am I doing something wrong? It took the settings, but obviously it didn't save the wireless key.
Okay.
Things like that, but the settings were there once I enabled restrictions and put in the wireless key. Those things came back, but the apps weren't there,
I know the apps will pop up, like if you put the device back in the group it was in, it should then pull those in and then remember the settings.
What do you mean group?
I have slides on that in a little bit. Hold that question, please. Obviously, again, needed when people are under 13. The workaround might be you have a nice day with all the parents. And you say, hey, we're going to do this with this. We're going to walk you through creating an Apple ID. We're going to purchase a free app for you so that it's free and doesn't require a credit card. An approach for this might be for your kids if now you decide to give them the password to this Apple ID that you have now created, that maybe you're going to give them an iTunes gift card. Be like, here's $10. You can use it as you want. There's a lot of combinations with this. That's a way around it. Hey, the student did not make the Apple ID. Question?
Well, it's actually...
Or comment.
The issue with the 13 is for the children going on. That's what's driving all of these discussions. One of the things we did is we have a one-to-one where we have laptops in grades 4 through 12. And we have a lot of apps that are non-COPA compliant. The other way around that was brought up in another session too, was what we do is we actually have parental notification. We have a website that lists all the apps that we use that are not COPA compliant. And we have written parental consent to create accounts on those pieces. And if you have that parental notification and verifiable parental consent, you can, I'm not recommending this, but you can work with the students to create accounts on COPA, non-COPA compliant sites for them, including what I've been told is the Apple ID.
Okay.
To create for them. So as an institution, you can broker that arrangement to get around that.
Excellent. That's...
It's up to you, however you want to do it.
So we can do it. We're going to do this unless you tell us.
No, you have to have signed consent.
And of course, if you do with anything, run it past your school board first, make sure they sign off on it. So
I just went through lawyer.
perfect.
Yes.
That's what we want to do.
So 2 years later, we'll be able to do it then.
Yeah, you never know. The other thing, if you're looking at like the institutional model, you may want to take something with restrictions and say, hey, you don't need the App Store. Again, lots of things. And then the last approach, layered. This is where you put on your organizational controlled apps that are associated with your organizational or institutional Apple ID. Those load on. Configure the device, you give it to the user, they run through Setup Assistant, and then they add their Apple ID. So you can have, I can't remember if it's either 3 or 5. You can have more than one Apple ID on the device. The downside to this is it gets very confusing if somebody goes to the App Store and they say, hey, there's 7 updates. And yes, update all. I don't know the password for that account. So then that's the process of, okay, use Configurator, and we'll go into that. Configurator requirements. What do you need to do? You have to have Lion. USB connection to the device. It is a physical, you have to be wired in order to use it. And everyone, I've synchronized my own device wirelessly with like iTunes, and I'm thinking, why would you ever want to synchronize 30 iOS devices wirelessly if it takes this long for me to do mine? iTunes, it has to be authorized on the machine for the apps that are being purchased. Sign into iTunes, authorize it with your institutional ID or your personal one that's going to have the ownership, and then you can buy those apps. And then the Apple ID entered into Configurator. One of the nice things they changed in 1.0.1 was like that first redemption code didn't count towards your VPP set. So if you bought 20, you would buy it, all right, one's consumed already just to buy it. Now I can put it on 19, wait, but I bought 20. So I think in 101, that first code, some magic happens where, all right, I bought 20, I've downloaded it once, and now I can install it on 20 devices. And just keep in mind the purchases, they're tied to the Apple ID that makes the purchase. So that works out the best with a cart or something very supervised. You wouldn't want to do that, something personal. That wouldn't work well. You can do device images. And this is pretty cool because it saves time in theory, because you can take your one device, set it up, make folders. You can set some of the restrictions. So before, when you had to go into each device and say restrictions and disallow installing apps, if you do that and then pull an image with Configurator, it'll retain that setting and copy it over to your other device. If you do backups, they have to be backed up and restored to the same type. So a supervised device backup can only be restored to a supervised device. So when you go through the list and you say, well, I made 7 backups, but I'm not seeing them. Okay, well, they were of a supervised device. So you have to hit that little tab, and I'll show what that looks like. With the VPP apps, how does that process work? I have a cool video, but I decided to put words up here because after the feedback yesterday with people saying, hey, talk about it in Configurator, like, I don't want time for Q&A. It's going to be way too much stuff. You add in the paid app to Configurator. It says, hey, you have to pull in a VPP spreadsheet, so you go ahead and you do that. You assign an app to either a device, or you can create device groups. So you can say it's enabled for group A or this iPad. You can view your current license usage, so you can see which device with the serial number is using which redemption code. It's good if you ever have to track where the device went, who's using it, I have 20 licenses, I have 30 devices, which people don't need it, so I can move the licensing around. And also with that, the moving apps now works on unsupervised devices as long as that device is erased in Configurator. So before, in the 1.0 release, if you had an unsupervised device and you said install this app, that code was consumed and you couldn't use it anymore. 1.01 changes that so that if the device is then erased in Configurator, that code becomes available again. And I have this little thing of code marked as consumed if the device is replaced. So if for some reason somebody manages to jam the adapter in the bottom of the device, wiggle it off and break it, I want to see someone try to do it just to watch. But because you can't pull that device back into Configurator to pull that license code off that's been redeemed, it's consumed. So if someone has a cracked screen that's going to be sent in, all right, plug it in, it still connects. Now I'm going to remove the app, pull that redemption code back, and be able to use it on another device.
But you have to be able to at least make it function.
Yeah, turn on and show up.
And what about putting in a lock code? Because you can't connect to iTunes unless you put in your lock code.
Because this, well, if it's a supervised device, it would kind of bypass it because you can't plug it into iTunes, period.
So will it connect the configurator with the lock before you put the lock code on?
I can't remember. I've done this before, and there was the little text, and I can't remember if it said, enter unlock code to continue. I don't know.
Try to test later.
Yeah. Again, you can take devices. You can assign them to somebody. I'll talk about that because I think it's really cool. You can send and collect documents from the device, and this is really good in schools where maybe you have a lab project for science, and you're going to give everybody the PDF version of the worksheet because that makes it electronic and using technology. Distribute that to everybody. They can take pictures. They can put it into the document. They can annotate. They can take their lab notes on. Take the iPads into one big cart, plug it into Configurator, and look at all the documents that each person has done and view their work. That's a lot better than trying to figure out how do I email this and all of that magic. And then the other item, MDM and Profile Manager, please use it if it works in your scenario. I don't want to say, no, just go use it because this guy said so. It's really helpful for the over-the-air changes. If maybe for some reason you disallow Safari and you have a mobile content browser, and then you need to undo that change, you don't want to have to like collect, like the Monty Python, bring out your dead thing, bring out your iPads, bring out your iPads. You wouldn't want to do that. If you do it with an MDM product, you can do that over the air, so that restriction can change on the fly as needed. Other benefits, kind of that miscellaneous slide because I couldn't think of anything else. Yes.
Wait till later.
I don't know, maybe.
So if you can place files onto an iPad, can you place plist files for settings that you wouldn't normally be able to change?
It'll only support documents that work with the iTunes file sharing stuff. So Evernote's on there, great, I can send a PDF, but not every app will do that.
Like Safari privacy mode. I don't want students to be able to run in privacy mode.
Is that a restriction that you can set with IPCU?
No. You just turn Safari on or off.
Oh.
But it's a plist setting. You go in and look at backups.
I bet if you made the setting, made a device backup, then restore the device backup to another device for the configurator workflow, that might copy over and do that. I couldn't think of another slide, so they're just these other two miscellaneous things. I don't know of a way currently, and this might have changed in the last week or two, to set a lock screen wallpaper on a device without using Configurator. So you go to the lock screen, it could be your AUP for your organization, could have a if lost, please found. By using this device, you agree to do none of these naughty bad things. That could be the wallpaper. And again,
There's a picture out of the record.
yeah, a whole bunch of things. Prepare. Because I don't like doing live demos, we're going to look at preparing a device. Oh, if you haven't looked at it, it's kind of nice just to look through and see what the functionality is of the app. If you want to set like an egg timer for 10 minutes, so you can have somebody wake you up. But just looking at Configurator, because it's great to talk about it, and sometimes you look at it like, oh, where is this stuff? Well, we're going to take a look. So there's the prepare, supervise, assign. Look, there's menu items. We're going to look at preferences. Here's the Apple ID that's associated through Configurator. So that'll be, hey, when I redeem VPP codes, that's going to be the app. If I want to set the lock screen to be something special, you can do that here. It'll be different for an iPhone or an iPad, so you can set a different wallpaper background for the lock screen. You can do things like device or username, custom, include user image. Like, well, wait, I can put a picture of, that's fun if you ever go into, if people don't use photos, find a coworker and just put in a funky picture and directory for them. They sign in and like, that isn't me. So you can do something like that. It makes it great to identify the device because it'll appear on the lock screen with this giant smiling face of them. Someone said they took a photo of me last night at the art gallery. I don't think I'm going to use that as my lock screen photo because it's probably not flattering. So we have here is you can go through the process of naming your devices. Hey, what do you want to call it? A great checkbox to number the devices sequentially. That way you don't have 17 devices or 170 all named some device. Now they'll be named some device 1 through some device 170. This is the supervision tab I was talking about, and that will set supervision on or off. The big difference is if something is supervised, you can only manage it from this configurator machine. You cannot connect it into iTunes. Yes?
What if you drop that machine and destroy it?
Then you would look at one of the last slides I have on how to back up the data so that you can move it across. Don't drop machines. The iOS will go through here. You can manage your backup sets. You can say, hey, I don't want this backup in here anymore. You can delete it, which is useful so you don't get 5,000 backups and not remember what they do. Profiles. You can import them, or you can create a new one. If you're used to iPhone configuration utility, this is going to look really, really familiar. I haven't tried dumping in a .mobile config from another product because there's a bunch out there that will generate that file. In theory, you should just be able to import that in and be able to use any other mobile config file. So somebody else who creates it can send it to you. You can import it in. I think one nice thing about Configurator, and I'm not sure if it's in the most recent version of the iPhone configuration utility, is it has those, well, it had until I corrected it, the little red callouts on here's the number of errors that are in your payload. Without that, it's very easy to accidentally say, I want to configure email for everybody. Turn it on, not put in anything about the configuration. Then you install it, and oh, you've configured a mail server with a mail account that has nothing in it. That just won't work. So here's some of the restrictions you can go through. You can turn off the Siri profanity filter. Never knew that was there. Photo stream. Yeah, I know. The iCloud is actually another interesting component because part of it is if it's a institutionally provided device, do you want to be able to synchronize data across that device, which you control, and say somebody's Mac at home? So there's data security things that might come up with that. Set media content. No, you can't listen to bleeping explicit music on your device. Wi-Fi. Hey, you have errors. Correct them. Fix them. It's good to have that. You don't want, again, those empty configuration profiles. Has anybody not played with the iPhone config utility? I know there's a Mac. There should be a Windows version as well. But again, this is all rolled in here. If you have certificates for your network, you can import those in. There's a lot of functionality here, as you can see. Apparently, future me. Has anyone seen, like, Rich use that term? Yes.
I'm sorry.
No. That's okay.
As I'm looking through the settings,
Yes.
it's telling me in the lower left-hand corner I have 2 validation errors.
Correct.
How can I view those right now and see what they are?
Is it email?
I don't know.
Or, well, which?
There's numbers next to each thing on the left-hand side.
Oh, I see. So it shows you the little arrow next to it.
Right. There'll be that big red call out of this part. No, I want questions. It makes it more fun. It's that way they're relevant things. So another item we have here are web clips. Is everyone familiar with web clips? Or should I, well, even if you're not familiar, I'm going to tell you what they are because I have to talk through this while the video is running. It's a little URL that looks like an app on your home screen. You can make things that are removable or not. They're nice with help desk things because we all want to tell people, use the help desk, and that's when you don't make removable. You can do things if you do MDM or profile enrollment. You can make those available through here. And again, these are just things that are nice because once I get this set up, that's where you see the benefit of how Configurator runs with it and then says, all right, you got this giant stack of iPads. Let's run through it. Web clips. I put another one up. It seemed like a great idea at the time to put like 17 web clips. All right. So those are the cool ones. We're going to say we want to use that profile. And then the other one are apps. Now the problem is you have to import apps automatically. So you have to go to your music, iTunes, some mobile applications, mobile downloads, and pull in your IPAs. It's going to go through the process and say, here's the apps, here's the version, here's the category. Free ones don't prompt about anything. Paid ones, however, like this one, I'm going to give you a little dialog box that say, hey, this requires VPP codes to be used. You need to specify VPP codes, and that's the spreadsheet that Apple will send you. Hold on for 1 sec, or I'll pause it. We're going to look at me clicking a code. Don't use that one. It's already been consumed.
But use that app. My colleague made it.
Really?
Yes.
Let him know that we like it.
That's what I'm going. Explain everything. Amazing.
Yeah, he's been very generous to our school district too. He's very helpful.
All right. I saw there were hands in the back.
Simple question. I just can't read. What was on that third last column there? It listed like some things and it was just too small to read.
Oh, let's find out. It was it the? So what you'll have is you'll have the app, you'll have the category, and then it'll tell you if it's free or the number of codes that are available. You mean I went over that way too fast and didn't explain it?
You have to consume one of your VPP codes in order to get it into iTunes first to pull it in here? Is that?
You have to, obviously you would have to redeem it because to purchase the paid app. But that still says I have one code available, even though that's the code I use to download the app. So it kind of gives you a +1 on that.
I don't understand where this list of apps is coming from.
Oh, okay. So what I did is there's a little button in the bottom right-hand corner where it's browse and add in your iTunes downloads. So what I did is, I know you can do it in iTunes. If you take that app list where you get, here's the 173 apps you've downloaded, or 3, or however many. If you do the right-click, the command-click, it should have a reveal in Finder. And then you'll get something like iTunes U blah, 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 .ipa. That's the file that you import into here. One of the challenges you have with this is because this is static and it doesn't talk to iTunes, when Evernote gets updated to version 4.1.9, which I'm sure it's already passed by now, you have to import that app back in. And then it's going to say, all right, you have Evernote version 4.1.9. Do you wish to replace the old version? So it's really just a manual. Go find the app, and then you dump them in.
Can you just?
All of this, could this be your own machine that you're running this on, or do you want to do this on a dedicated machine you're going to be using later on?
You could do this on up to 5 machines because of the iTunes authorization with the Apple ID. So you could do it on yours to test it out if you wanted. You could deauthorize that machine, authorize another one, pull the content back down, and run it from there. But keep in mind, again, that that device can only be set up or supervised with one configurator machine at a time. Question?
So there, I think maybe similar question. The user account that you log in to run Apple Configurator should be associated specifically with these, you might say, school Apple ID.
Right, or you can associate that in iTunes. It's probably better to have a network-based account or something that's going to be specific for configurator.
When I run it here, I've got all my own personal apps.
Right, and then if you were to install that on the device, it would be your Apple ID that would get prompted for the software updates.
I
Question?
was just going to say, we've often seen people use fast user switching. So you just have a
Yes.
Tour account on the same machine. That
Yes.
was kind of a vanilla iTunes and not all your own personal copies.
Yes, that's a very good way to do it as well. Where did I leave off? Here. There we go.
Repeat that again, what you were doing?
You can use fast user switching, so you have another account that you use for Apple Configurator, like for that cart. And then you could even have the teacher potentially manage that. They just sign in with they go to fast user switching and use the cart login instead of their personal account on there. They can switch back and forth to do the configuration. It doesn't mix personal and school.
Configurator 1, that's your network ID. Go use that account when you want to run configurator and use whatever else for the other.
What about
Something sports happened just now. Sorry.
syncing the library folder where the database is kept
Okay.
to a network share?
You could do that, sure.
Could you then run configurator on multiple carts?
Again, you would still be stuck at that, you would have that 5-device limit,
No, but
or
if
5.
the user was in one end of the school and didn't want to walk to the cart that's on the other end of the school to sync, could they go to the cart that's nearest them?
No, because they should walk. No, I'm kidding. No, we want to promote wellness. Just, come on, it's over there. You could do that. I mean, you could do it with portable home directories if you wanted, but the challenge, again, the potential challenge with that is even though you're symlinking the content, you still have to look at that certificate that's going to tie it to that physical machine. So you would go with Configurator over to this computer, and if you plug that iPad in that was configured with that one, you might not necessarily have the second computer recognize it because it wasn't the configurator machine hardware-wise that configured it. All right, I'm going to continue up with this video here. Oh. If this is the worst that I have to worry about for demos not working, I am incredibly pleased. Of course, if I can figure the rest out, is a whole other story. Well, the only thing left in that video was looking at it doing that entire process. Does anybody really want to see the spinning status wheel go through and around in circles? No? All right, so you're okay with that? All right. That was a lot about preparing, wasn't it? But that's important because you can't supervise devices unless you prepare them. And the whole process of supervising, and it sounds silly saying that it must be a supervised device with the title of supervise. When you're doing preparation, there's a little slider. You have to turn supervision on to be able to supervise the device. The great thing is this lets you do a lot more logical grouping of the devices, and it's not this pile of iPads. It's, I'm configuring science right now, and you throw the 30 in, you configure them. Now you make a group, and they're all in there, and they're in a way that makes sense. The great thing about that is it allows you to have differences in the configuration, such as apps or configuration profiles. As an example, maybe your initial prepared device puts the wireless on. And maybe if you go and do the teacher group, it's going to have another profile that's going to do things like configure email with your server settings so that that information is ready to go. You might have different calendars that then get put in through the configuration profile for that group. If their settings may be different for students in a part of the building because this cart of iPads needs to connect to this wireless SSID for whatever reason, you can do that through the different groups and the configuration and different app sets.
Can those stack?
Yes.
So you have multiple groups on individual devices.
Right, and what you should still have then is that most restrictive set is what will apply. So you could configure wireless for everybody in one and then teachers with the teacher wireless SSID. Or it can be the AT&T Wi-Fi one. Supervising, when you do this, it's not over the air. So that means configuration changes are going to require you to connect the device physically back into the computer. That's why MDM can be nice to have to leverage. Even if you never need to use it, having the functionality there, so if something does happen, is nice. And you can do flexible licensing. What? How does that work? I've never thought of that with VPP codes. I buy 20, and I know that only these 10 need it, or let's just say I have 100 iPads. I buy 20 copies of iMovie, and I know that we're only going to need it on each group of 25 for a quarter of the school year. Because it's a school project. We do, 5th grade does it in this time, 6th grade does it here. You could buy that 20, put it on the 25 devices. As soon as they're done, remove it from those, and now redeploy it on the others. So what does this look like? And well, we're going to do the little Supervised Tour. I created a couple of groups, art, English, math, and science. And I have 2 devices. Sorry, I only put 2 in, but I was getting confused myself when I was starting to do this because I moved them between so many different groups. I didn't want to do 8,000. But you could go here and say that you have a different configuration profile. Right now I'm looking at all supervised devices. That's pretty much going to be the catch-all location as soon as you supervise devices. You're going to get 50, 100, however many you did, until you put them into groups. you'll see here, hey, it's waiting for the connection. So because they are required to be in USB, I wanted to show you what it would look like. Well, all right, now I'm authorizing it. It's installing the app. Cool, it installed it. Almost there. I was tempted to make a cardboard with like paint, so if it got too boring, I could say you can watch the video, you can watch the paint dry over here. So what I have here now is a device called Roam iPad. It has a couple of apps on it. And I'm going to move it into Art. All right, well, what does the Art group look like? Well, now it has the iPad that I put into it. And for some reason, I'm going to take that iPad and say it goes to iTunes U. I think you're going to catch the drift of how this works after this, like, twice. So the Art group, all iPads in there are going to get iTunes U. Just that's how it works through the configuration changes, where you can differentiate the apps, the configuration between different groups. It's going to go through. It's going to install apps. It's going to do cool magic. Done. All right, now just look at English. All right, that's here. I think when I put it in science is where you're going to see the VPP code on the right side. So if you look next to explain everything here, it has a little 1. And that's just indicating to me I have one available VPP code for this application. So what I can do with the supervised devices, and I guess I put into math, is look at that for my licensing. So that's going to help keep me legal, which is very good from, our lawyers love hearing that. You can remove from various groups. All right, let's take off iTunes. Let's put on this other app. If we click on it, we'll see, hey, I'm 1 out of 1. Here's the code. The little check mark means it has been kind of redeemed, so that one's no longer valid from the App Store perspective, but it's available within Configurator in kind of its own little realm of existence. I'm going to install that app. I'm going to click Apply, and I'm going to watch the 1 change to a 0 because now I've consumed all of the licenses. If I want to install that on another device, unless I remove it, I'm going to have to import in another VPP spreadsheet, and then I'm going to get another set of codes. Here's the device, the serial number, and the name that's using it. So that's relatively cool to be able to find where it is. 2 little bits of info. You can get info on the device, get a whole bunch of info, see how much space is being used. And if you need to do anything with inventory or registering a device in the iOS development portal, you can export out data on devices that are in Configurator, which, again, makes it useful for inventory stuff. Yes, question?
I have a app on my laptop that I like.
Okay.
That I want to copy off, put on the configurator, put it in that directory that you're talking about, and then check it to add it and put it on 20 machines. What's to stop me from doing that? Forget about the lead. I mean, if you wanted to get to do that, will it allow you to do something?
Is it a paid app or a free app?
Paid, free.
If it's paid, it's going to require you to use a VPP code.
It will require a VPP.
Right. It will.
So even if it was tied to my Apple ID on my device, when I carry it over to the other machine.
And important is to say, hey, this is a paid app,
Yep.
and it'll kind of stop you there. Yeah. Yes.
A general question about what might be an edge case, but let's say you wanted to own the iPad space in terms of Configurator.
Okay.
And you're dealing with a pretty distributed group of carts. Maybe they're in different schools even.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that it could potentially make sense to throw a Mac Mini on the cart with, a reservation on the Wi-Fi network so that, and then you've got like 4 hubs connected to it or whatnot. Whenever anything needs to happen, you would just be able to know that all the iPads are associated with that Mac Mini, which has a backup solution,
right.
so you're not using anything. But you're able to not get out of your seat and still manage and maintain those geographically distributed carts.
Yeah. You could do that.
Do you know of anybody trying to work with USB IP in order to encapsulate the USB traffic?
No, I don't. Someone here might, though. First, yeah, tweet it, throw the little the hashtag on. So the last spot, and this is, I really like this because for our teachers, we've had so many people that are using it and they say, great, the kids have done this, and how do I get the document now? Well, let's put an email account. Oh, wait, but then it's the same email account on. Okay, well, we can IMET. Well, I need to put an Apple ID, and the kids FaceTime with the. On and on and on. So you can assign an iPad to a user. It's great for inventory, not only because your inventory system has Johnny Smith has iPad number 17, but the app shows you that. It's better, or even cooler, for kind of backing up in case a device needs to be swapped out. Why would it need to be swapped out? So if I've prepared a device and I've supervised it and now I've assigned it to me, and because I'm clumsy, I drop my iPad and the screen shatters. Well, I bought AppleCare Plus on it, so that's okay. Plug that into Configurator, check that device in. It's going to take my content and my settings. It creates a little backup of it, and now that device is free. Take the replacement device, plug it in, supervise it, assign it to me, and check it out. It's going to take my content and it's going to go ahead and restore it onto that device. It's not a full-scale, here's how we back up our iPad solution, because that would be tedious. But it's an excellent component out there, collecting, personalizing, and making it easy to find. Has everybody dealt with carts or anything that has a label with a number? And then you look at the cart and you say, all right, put yours in spot number 7. How many times do they actually get in that spot? So if you can eliminate numbering and making it personal and easy to find, because here's a picture of me. I know this is my iPad. It's great, especially for little kids. Question?
Yeah, sorry, just jump back.
Sure.
The backup you were mentioning?
Yes.
When you check in a device and you check it back out, does that automatically manage your VPP codes?
You would the checkout, check-in, no, but if you go back a layer and say it's unsupervised, that'll pull those codes off and now they're available. So like if it breaks, you would want to check in, unsupervise, and then now you would have the VPP codes that were on there be available again to go to the replacement device. So what does assigning look like? I swear this is almost the shortest video of them all. It's the last one though, so it's not too bad. You can make groups. The groups are awesome because you can make them however you want, whatever manner really works out best for your organization. I'm going to make one students, I think of staff. Oh no, I did teachers. The nice thing is then you can create users and put them into those groups. So again, just that logical grouping of how are you doing it now and does this capability exist? No, not really. You can do local users. So I can say, hey, this person, I can rename it, delete. What I like about it is everyone use directory services of some kind, AD, OD. All right, this computer is bound to a directory service. So what should happen, once I recreate the group, is I can start typing in a group that exists in Open Directory or a user. It's going to qualify that, find it, and pull that account in. Cool, that's great for users because it's one, but what if I wanted to create bigger groups and say, hey, I have a group in Open Directory? You would just create a group and say tech staff, and then it'll pull in all the members and give you everybody in it. What you didn't see was the little plus sign. I added in a document, navigate it to a PDF file, and say import this in, put it into Evernote. I'm going to take the USB connected device. I'm going to say it's mine. I'm going to check it out. It's going to take the activation. It's going to pair it, make sure it's still paired with this specific machine. It's going to take the configuration profile, and it should do installing documents. OK, cool. It's one. Big deal. You can refresh it so that if you provide that out to multiple people and they've done a lab report, they're doing something cool, you can now refresh that document and view it. It works with Quick View. So if you select the file and hit space, it's going to go ahead and pull it up. So you'll be able to view the content on that device without needing to pick it up or work with it anyway. You can save out the document that I've worked on. So if you want to pull the content off and save out a bunch of PDFs for the lab report, you can do it through here. I think teachers would like that.
Movies.
Does iTunes file sharing work with iMovie? I don't know if it would pull it out then. I'm going to take another user. See, this is what I was saying. You can make these fun little photos. And it kind of crunches their face on it, which is pretty cool. It's like the little obey sticker. So you could go ahead and now this person has this device. I'm going to add a document. Here's the nice thing. If I want to send this to Evernote, but Evernote isn't on this device, it's going to give me a little exclamation point. Say, hey, you're trying to send documents to the application, but it's not on here. So it'll let you correct that. I think the next thing I'm going to do is look up at all users. Come on, all the way up to the top. There we go. So there's my documents for everybody in this group, the file, and the owner of the document. So I'll be able to view, here's my version of this file. I could look then at my coworkers and say, here's his version of the file, and be able to view those differences. You can delete documents and settings from the users that they've put up there. And I think I'm going to check in my device now. I'm going to wait for the connection. Again, USB only, so you have to be plugged in. Bradford PowerSync carts work really great, and they're not going to give me $500 because I just said Bradford PowerSync cart. Now 1,000. No, they work well. They charge. They're very reliable from what we've seen in our example. And this is like if you're looking for a solution, that one works well. Obviously, there's a bunch of other powered USB hubs that you can work with. Or heck, shop class. Kids, today we're going to design an iPad checkout station for the school. Yes, question?
You keep saying USB only. Was that a strong recommendation or a requirement of this program?
You can't do it via wireless.
Okay, that's all.
Somewhere in here, while I was babbling, I checked the device back in. So for me, it says I don't have a device anymore. I'm going to check the new one back out to me. And what it will do is, all right, checking activation, checking pairing, authorizing apps, restoring backup. So now it's grabbing the content that I had on the device that has been pulled in and putting it back on here. I think it's cool. I'm going to go here first, just because. I don't know.
Can you import a roster file in there, like your class or something? I know you'd self-assign them all, but it'd be nice not to type all the names.
If your IT already has your groups made up for your class rosters in Open Directory with a group, you can just use that. I don't know if I didn't.
You could just import in Open Directory.
Right. Or you could go ahead and, there might even be like a file import to put in the users. I don't know. All right, come on, finish backup. Oh, it's actually done. Awesome.
What tool did you use for your
ScreenFlow. But I could have probably done it with QuickTime and just done the screen recording or Jing or 17 other products. Yes?
Can users be members of more than one group, and is the same true or false for iPads and the iPad groups?
iPads can be in more than one group.
Okay.
I can probably find out as soon as I'm done, because you should be able to put in any user into any group.
Okay.
It would just be weird with different documents in different groups for the same user.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if you had a level, like a grade level, where you have multiple teachers, one for science, one for math, and maybe you want to delineate it that way, like by the teacher name. Yeah. Here's this big chart again, that ownership stuff, because it's really important to look at what it all does. If you're looking at personal ownership, you're really looking at the end users taking on the ownership and maintenance. They're always going to have the content on the device. Of course, I could go ahead and put on some training PDFs, like a getting started with your iPad document, which will just mean they'll ask, how do I print it? It has low IT support, and it's quick deployment. If you go with the institutional model, it's my school district owns it, my business unit, however that works out. The end user content is theirs temporarily until I check it back in which case it gets erased, but there's going to be another slide to talk about that. A lot of support. The only reason I put slow for deployment is when you're dealing with the institutional aspect, You probably have committees that you have to work with to figure out what apps are going to be on. That's really going to slow down deployment. They're ready, they're here. Well, we have to talk about what we need on it. And then if you do layered ownership, you have a combination of the organizational owned apps, personal ones, and content. All right, so what are these examples and how would you use Configurator in them? Hopefully the background information will make this stuff really good and gel together. If you're doing a personal example, that might be bring your own device, in which case the user brings it in and you're just saying, here's our wireless. Or possibly even teacher or student iOS devices. Again, depending upon how you want to work with it for your organization. You can easily say a teacher or student iOS device is going to be layered, or it could be personal, or it could be institutional. I can't give you the best answer for those because it's so dependent upon the environment and the system. But what would the deployment workflow look like? If it's a personal device, if it's BYOD, I might inventory it only from the aspect of that way if somebody loses their device and I find it in the hallway and it gets turned into the principal's office, I can flip it over and say, all right, this is John's, and then be able to call into the office and say, we found your iPad. Maybe you would want to update iOS. Maybe you'd want to put on the wireless configuration. Or maybe you want to make it an excellent training opportunity so that when they get the little red 1 on settings and they go into software update, they don't call saying, I need you to update my iPad. Just update it yourself. And again, the wireless component, that could be there for the reason of, I want you to add wireless networks, including ours, so you know how to do this on your own. And it kind of roll in some professional development and training into it. You would then give it to your end users. And if you're providing apps to them, my suggestion, I almost want to say for all the deployment cases, is give them the VPP code and let them take the ownership. Solely because you don't need to worry about it afterwards. But again, not every environment's going to be like that. The advantage is I can buy the app for half as much and not pay tax. And if you buy it, you have to buy it at full price and pay tax. And possibly if the end user wants to enroll it in an MDM product, you might want to have a policy and just be forward with, if you do it, your capabilities are find it and wipe it if you lose it. We're just giving you the ability to do so. I like the update workflow for this because when there's an update for the iPad or an app, you don't have to do anything. It'll be something that the end user should go ahead and do because it's personal, it's your device, and you have the ownership. Institutional example, and I'm sure you can think of 17 more bullet points to put up here for what this might be if you were looking at that supervised, the more restricted lockdown deployment. It might be a grade level or a subject level iPad cart where this one cart of 30 iPads is going to go to 6 different classrooms, but they all are going to be using the same app. If iWork is in the third screen behind Angry Birds and draw something below YouTube, but somehow above Dictionary, and the other one has it on the front page, and kids pick different ones all the time, you're going to lose a little bit of time with where did it go. School provided iOS devices to students, especially if you're under 13, and the school wants to maintain ownership. That'd be really the only way without some of the methods we heard earlier be used, or really for a training event. That's kind of a cool one like for today. If I brought all these iPads for everybody, I wouldn't want you to be able to connect it to your computer and install your content and play games. We'd play Angry Presenters, kind of just fling stuff out at people. You would possibly, well, if you did this example, you would set up a device exactly how you want it to be, and then you would use the configurator to do a backup of the device. So that way you have the configuration ready to go. You would inventory it, you would do this whole update process, you would put it in a device group, you would deploy it, and maybe you would assign it to a user. The tough part with this is when you update, if you're in charge of it, you need to test the apps and the iOS updates. And I put that in there only because we've had so many apps that get purchased and the update crashes it. Well, if we just deployed it, because we all update in education, our computers and iPads, oh so often during the school year. If it crashes and now the classroom can't use it, that's not going to be good. You would have to add that app back into Configurator, so you would go through the process of importing it again and replacing the older one. And then you put the device in the apply mode. Fun story. When working with the apply mode and configurator, setting up some iPads, going through some stuff to make sure it worked. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh, man, my phone's on. I'm just going to go and plug it in and keep working and blah, blah, blah. Then all of a sudden it restarts. It had downloaded the iOS because it was stuck in apply and supervise, and it erased my iPhone. And I had this great, really restricted configuration on here. You have to do that same process. So when you get all right, we have to update these 17 apps and maybe do it quarterly or 2 times a school year or however it works out for your organizational cycle, you can have a computer that is just pretty much in apply. All right, sometime today, come down, plug in your iPad, and it's just going to go and update. If you do that, there's a slide a few down here that, no, you wouldn't have it in that model because it would be fully supervised. It would be in layered. I give you apps, here they are, might even be the teacher iPad. Again, you can do so many different configurations that there isn't a good one. You can take a personal device, supervise it, and say you can't plug it into a computer, but do everything else that you want on it. And they then would retain ownership of all the apps. So maybe you would set up a master device this way, maybe not. You could go through the device group, set up a system, and all of that. There we go. Use the Apple ID for personal content, so stuff that the user has purchased with their personal Apple ID on that deployed and configurated iPad can be done. You would update institutional apps via the App Store with the institutional Apple ID. So you could do it either on the device or plug it in. Maybe sync via configurator. And then there's this one, preserve user content. If you have a device that is set up in configurator that is supervised of any manner, and you don't set this, when I plug in the iPad, it's going to go through and say, oh, well, the extra content that you added isn't needed anymore, and blow all of it away. So that's an important one.
Is that per device?
What was that?
Is that per device?
That is just on the machine running configurator.
So that's for all devices then?
Right, that are connected to that one.
That's got to be a 1.5 version where they can set that per group or per device.
You know what? The thing I love about this is it's so early in the development that found bugs like, here's the problem I'm finding, and they've been really responsive, Apple, for letting it get done. So let them know feedback. Backup. So when you drop your device or something bad happens, here's the Apple article, but the summary of it is back up your library application support com.apple.configurator folder. That's going to have a lot of data because it's going to have your device backups. There's going to be a folder for the IPSWs, the iOS files, for each device model. So when you have your iPhone 4 and your iPhone 4S and your iPhone 4 from AT&T and the iPad 2 and the new iPad and the iPad, and you're going to get a lot of these files downloaded, taking up a lot of space. There's also going to be any of the apps that you import get put into that folder, and all of your configuration settings. Library keychains. You want to grab your supervision certificate, public and private keys, because if the computer blows up and the key changes, you can't supervise those devices without erasing them, which would mean all the VPP codes that were there you would not have access to. And if you want to grab any of the settings from Configurator, library preferences, you can use Time Machine to back this up. You can use any other third-party backup product to hit these directories. Just make sure you have it backed up. And here's a cool one. If you do anything with Apple Configurator and anything with Profile Manager, and I believe it even applies to a lot of the MDM products out there, you can automate the device enrollment process through this little document. It involves grabbing some trust certificates, but that way through the Configurator workflow, it'll automatically enroll it in your MDM for you. So that's a good time saver. And speaking of time savers, Q&A. So that's a lot, isn't it? Like there's 17 million things you can do with Configurator, and there isn't really one right answer, is there? So feel free to ask questions and like throw stuff. I don't know. We'll go over here, and then I'm gonna try to go like this way and then back.
basing this off of iPad cart. And
Okay.
It's a, like for, let's say, the common department, they have multiple classes throughout the day. Would you run, like, and I have to sync it, you know, you don't want to manually sync for each class because each class has a different amount of students and different profiles.
Right.
Would you use something like Automator to, like, you know, okay, at 9:55 after all the iPads are plugged in, run the, right, the back, or run the profile for the Penn class? So on and so forth.
I don't know if Automator can do it, that'd be something that you could do.
Not just Automator.
I don't know if,
Something that's like, I mean, so I don't have to have the faculty member going in there into the Mac.
yeah, I don't know if there's something in like the command line anywhere in the app that you could possibly run or cron or launch D and just say, hey, at this time on Tuesday, fire off a command. The app's so new that we're all like, hey, look what I found it can do. Well, thanks for saying hi and listening. And I'll be around. So the nice thing is it's kind of that last session of the day, which means I'm probably not going to get out of this room until 6. But thanks for attending. Hopefully it was informative. And enjoy the evening.